Hey everyone, I'm Tori Davis, Product Design Manager for the Foundations team. Today I'm here with Anna from our research team, who's going to walk us through the current study happening regarding navigation and the location for deployments, infrastructure, and package and registry. We currently have two proposals in this issue. The first one is to reconsolidate deployments, infrastructure, and package and registry into one menu, and the alternative is to just combine infrastructure and package and registries into one menu item. So for this study, we're going to look at those two versions along with what we currently have on .com. So now I'll go ahead and turn it over to Anna, who is going to tell us a bit more about the methodology, our target audience, the current process, and also next steps.
Thank you, Tori. So what we'll basically do is we're going to run a tree test, which is the standard methodology for evaluating navigation solutions. And as Tori already said, we'll be looking at the current solution plus the two alternative proposals to understand which of them is the greatest in terms of performance, and then also how does it compare to a previous navigation that we had in milestone 13.5. If you wonder how a tree test runs, what you basically do is you give users the navigation. They don't see all the UI, they just see the navigation available with all like the items called out. And then you give them a set of tasks and ask them to, indicate where they would go in order to solve that task. And then what you measure is how successful are users in finding the right entry point to solve that task. And we'll then collect basically the task success for each individual task, but also across all tasks. And this is something we have done before in milestone 13.5, which is really great because we can use that particular study as our baseline and then see from there how does the current solution and these two proposals actually compare against that baseline. That means also that we keep the methodology pretty much aligned to what we did back then in order to be able to compare results. And that means we'll look at the same target audience that we had before and assess and use also the same tasks. With the addition of a few tasks for items that didn't exist before. So for instance, we came up with new tasks for container registry or package registry that we didn't have in 13.5. Speaking of the target audience, what we'll be using or who we'll be inviting for this are software engineers, DevOps engineers, and system administrators that are not familiar with GitLab. The reason for that is because we want to avoid a familiarity bias that GitLab users would usually have with our navigation, especially if we're evaluating the current solution. So in order to make sure that people are not familiar with any of the navigation, we can only test with users that are not familiar with GitLab at all. In the past, we had a sample size of 15 users, and ideally we have the same or even more, because that will just give us more robust results. And I'm pretty confident that we can have more users since we're working with a new vendor for the recruiting processes as well, which was a little bit of a hiccup last time around and kind of resulted in only having these 50 users. Where are we with the vendor is that we are working with Optimal Workshop. They are offering a software solution to set up the tree test, but they also offer recruiting services to then execute basically, or to invite participants to take the test. And they are now fully set up in our systems, which is great because then we can just, get started with everything. And where we are now in terms of timeline is that we'll launch the test in the week of October 18th. Until then, we basically still have to finalize the wording of all the tasks and set up the test in the system. And if all goes well with recruiting, meaning that the vendor can deliver on their promised timeline, we would already have insights by the end of the month, end of October. If recruiting takes longer, then I would expect results by mid-November, simply because also I do have other analysis work in the first week of November related to paid NPS and post-purchase survey. If you feel that this project needs to be prioritized more from an analysis point of view, let me know, and then I can adjust. And yeah, that's pretty much everything I wanted to share.
Awesome. Thanks, Anna. In terms of the tasks that we're using for this study, I know we have a link somewhere down here that talks about them. Let me see if I can.
So the tasks, the tasks will all be captured in the research brief, which I'm about to link in here as well, in the issue, because there were basically 14 tasks that were previously done, but we need to add 3 more to cover the elements that were not available in the navigation before.
That makes sense.
So there will be a total of 17 tasks. Yeah.
Will we keep these tasks from last time the exact same?
Yeah, I would keep them the exact same, because that way we have basically that baseline measurement and understand if, you know, any of the changes or how are changes to the navigation impacting our overall success rate that we had last time. Yeah.
And when we're looking at like the number of participants for the study, like how do you decide 50 versus more? Is it just like how recruiting is going, or?
So 50 is the bare minimum we should have. The more, in generally speaking, like the more users you test, the more robust the results get. And 100 is, considering like the pool of users that we have available, a good sample size to go for. Yeah, considering also the effort it takes to recruit. But even if we have 50, we'll still be okay to get meaningful results out.
Great. And then once we get data back, what sort of like format should we expect to be able to compare and make decisions with the results?
Yeah, so I think if you go into the issue, okay, it's not here, but if you look at the previous study that was done, there's an overview of task success per task. It'll look something like this, maybe a little bit different, but this is a graph where you can basically tell how successful users were per task, and then also the overall task success, which is not in this image as I can see right here. And then again, compared for all the 3 different versions. So you can compare for each version, you can see how successful were users in completing a task with a given navigation solution. And if we see significant differences, you know, you can argue, okay, this might be the better navigation solution to go with when it comes to task success.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Were you going to say something else, sir?
Yeah, I guess my last comment on this is just to keep in mind that what we're assessing here is task success. So it's something from a usability point of view. When it comes to navigation changes, of course, you also do want to look at long-term effects, right? Like you want to see how, like, you know, how, for lack of better word, like how satisfied are people with like the navigation changes? Are they annoyed because, you know, changes are happening? And this is something we cannot capture in this sort of test. Like for this, we would need a different setup, more of like a A/B experimentation framework to really assess over long term how people are impacted by our navigation changes.
Great. Awesome. Okay. Thanks so much, Anna, for running through all of the content related to the study and the research that's happening. That's all the questions that I have for you right now. But if anyone else watching this video has any questions or wants to provide any feedback, I'll go ahead and link to this research issue in the video description. And yeah, thanks again, Anna, for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Till next time, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.